Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per a tweet from Clito Reyes, Mexico, and their social media account. Current Bantamweight champion of the World Boxing Council, Yuli Hangaluna, keeps training at a good pace under the supervision of her father, Julio Luna, waiting for the date for her third defense of the title. Two-division champion Yuli Hangaluna, who held the IBF title up there at Super Bantamweight, eventually made her way down to Bantamweight, beat Mariana Juarez for the WBC title in late 2020, and has defended the title, defended it officially at least 3 times since then. I expected that last year would be a more eventful year for the WBC Bantamweight champion, it being that she campaigns in a densely populated, talent-rich division with 4 other champions. She's the youngest of the 4, but coincidentally, she's also the most experienced, with more rounds in the bank and more pro fights overall. Yuli Hangaluna sports a professional record of 24 wins with 3 losses, 1 draw, 4 knockouts. 28 contests overall, 28 professional bouts against some really good fighters. And as stated, I expected that last year would have been a more eventful year for the WBC champion, it being that there's no shortage of talent and no shortage of good fights to make in the women's bantamweight division. But alas, even though Yuli Hangaluna did see action, she did see action 2 times, those really weren't high-profile fights. They were fights of some significance. You know, the rematch with Jessica Gonzalez that she had in June, that afforded Yuli Hangaluna the chance to avenge the loss that she suffered to Jessica some years ago, and she did that, won a unanimous decision, took on unbeaten up-and-comer Mayeli Flores, a high-risk, low-reward fighter, but a fight that flew largely under the radar. It did have a pleasing aesthetic. It was an all-action fight. But it's not a fight that did much to enhance Yuli Hangaluna's profile. Yuli Hangaluna, over the years, she's fought some good fighters. She fought Maureen Shea. She fought long-reigning champion Mariana Juarez. She fought Jessica Gonzalez 2 times. Mayeli Flores. She's only 28 years old. The youngest of the 4 reigning champions in the women's bantamweight division. She's younger than Nina Hughes, younger than Ebony Bridges, younger even than Dina Thorsland by a few months. Dina's 29, whereas Yuli Hang is 28. And Yuli Hangaluna is arguably the most accomplished of the 4. Both Yuli Hang and Dina Thorsland, they're both 2-division champions. They've both held titles in the women's super bantamweight and bantamweight divisions, but Yuli Hangaluna's quality of competition is slightly better than Dina's. I want to say that they're both the most accomplished fighters at this weight, but Yuli Hangaluna has comparatively faced better fighters than Dina, better fighters than Nina, and better fighters than Ebony. I think it's safe to say that because she's got more pro bouts than they do, and she's been around longer in the sport overall. Now, Ebony Bridges very recently underwent hand surgery for her right hand, a nagging injury that she's been sporting for some months. She waited until after the Shannon O'Connell fight to get that corrective surgery, so it's safe to say that her very next fight likely won't be a unification match, likely won't be a fight with someone like Yuli Hangaluna. Nina Hughes, she very recently became a champion, WBA champion, in her last fight with then WBA champion, unbeaten Jamie Mitchell. In theory, you should be able to make a unification match between Nina Hughes and Yuli Hangaluna, in theory at least, though I get the sense that they will allow Nina a voluntary title defense en route to what could be a Shannon Courtenay fight, a Shannon Courtenay showdown, or they might shoot for Shannon straight away. But in a nutshell, I'm not expecting Nina to share the ring with Yuli Hang in her very next fight. That leaves only Denmark's own unbeaten 2-division champion, Dina Thorsland, who's set to see action very soon. She's scheduled to see action late next month opposite the ring Argentina's own former IBF champion, Deborah Ana E. Lopez. Next month on the 25th. Beyond that title defense, should Dina emerge the victor, I don't see why Dina can't move straight into a unification match with Yuli Hangaluna. I think the real issue there is that neither Dina or Yuli Hang are with a major promotional outfit that has an existing broadcast deal. Thus, you can do the unification match between them in theory, but they're only going to get paid so much money to do it. I think that that is a stumbling block. Without a major platform, you can't make major money. It's the funniest thing because while Ebony Bridges is not the most long-reigning champion of the 4 champions at this weight, she is in fact the most recognizable face, the most recognizable fighter in the women's bantamweight division, and she does have the major backing that Dina and Yuli Hang don't have.
Credit to her for being as enterprising as she is. She's done a very good job of marketing herself.
Even better that she means to become this division's undisputed champion, though as stated, she's coming off a surgery. I don't expect her to share the ring with another champion in her very next fight, perhaps later on in the year, presumably the winner of Nina Hughes versus Shannon Courtenay.
Yeah, I get the sense that if Ebony's going to unify with anybody, it would presumably be the winner of that fight, though. Where does that leave Yuli Hangaluna? Where does that leave Dina Thorsland?
Questions that need answers. I hope this year turns out to be a more eventful year than the last one was for both Dina and Yuli Hangaluna. It's about time we start seeing unification matches at Bantamweight. In men's heavyweight news, on the heels of his big win over former WBO champion Joseph Parker, his big knockout win, Joyce says, "I'm not surprised my name is not mentioned as a possible foe for Anthony Joshua."
I'm not surprised either, because you're with Frank Warren.
He's with Eddie. You box on BT. He boxes on DAZN.
Gonna act like we don't notice.
Under the WBO, Joyce would be the mandatory challenger to the winner of Fury versus Usyk. Joshua, a former two-time world champion, is looking to bounce back after suffering consecutive defeats to Usyk. Several names are being mentioned for Joshua's next few fights, but Joyce is not one among them. It's not a surprise, because when does Joshua mention my name? Apart when I was in the Olympics, soon as I turned pro, he didn't mention my name or Eddie Hearn.
Joyce went pro in October of 2017. That's the same year that Anthony Joshua had his mega match with Vladimir Klitschko. He fought 2 times that year.
He had the Klitschko fight, the mega match, in April, and moved on to an IBF-mandated title defense against Carlos Takam in October.
The same month that Joyce turned pro.
At this time, Anthony Joshua was the biggest name in heavyweight boxing, the biggest earner overall. Tyson Fury was still out battling his demons. Anthony had just become a unified heavyweight champion.
He had won the IBF title from then unbeaten Charles Martin, and he had just procured the vacant WBA title in the Klitschko fight. He subsequently went on to defend those 2 alphabet titles against Carlos Takam. So you tell me, for what reason would he be mentioning Joyce, who had just turned pro that year?
This is why I resent when fighters do this, because what they're attempting to do is muddy up the waters, make things seem murkier than they are. If Joyce debuted in October of 2017.
Why the fuck would Anthony Joshua be looking at him?
He was a lot further along in his career at that time than Joyce was. Joyce turned pro in late 2017, and by that time, Anthony was already a unified champion, looking for unification matches with the likes of Joseph Parker, then unbeaten WBO champion, with the likes of Deontay Wilder, then unbeaten WBC champion. What would people have said then if Anthony Joshua decided to target a guy who just turned pro the same month he fought Carlos Takam?
I'll tell you what people would have said. They would have said, "Why are you looking at that guy? Shouldn't you be looking at your fellow champions?"
Needless to say, I find Joyce's revisionist version of history somewhat disingenuous. Who added, "If you're not with us, you're against us." And I don't have millions of followers like Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury yet. Maybe it's because I don't have enough followers. If people want to see it, let's make it happen. I guess it just needs to be built up, and when he has no choice but to fight me, he will fight me. But it's a big fight. Olympic gold versus Olympic silver. Maybe the medals could be swapped. I think I'm more deserving. He's not gun-shy, but he's apprehensive about being knocked out because he's been knocked out a few times.
What do you mean he's been knocked out a few times? He's only been knocked out once, and that was the Andy Ruiz fight over 3 years ago.
It's the only time Anthony's ever been knocked out under the hot lights. It's the only time he's ever been knocked out. His only recorded knockout loss. The 2 losses to Alexander Usyk were points decision losses, not knockout losses.
And this is what I mean when I say that Joyce is being somewhat disingenuous here. Knocked out a few times.
This is bordering on slander, the way he's revising history and exaggerating about things.
I believe Frank Warren is coaching him to do this. He's coaxing him to call out Anthony Joshua, not because he's looking for a fight, but because he's looking for clout. He's looking for notoriety.
He added, he's not gun-shy, but he's apprehensive about being knocked out because he's been knocked out a few times. He prefers to be on the back foot and out of danger. It will will tell when we see the rematch with him and Dillian White. Because in the Dillian White fight, he was getting hit with big shots. He was wobbling on his feet, but was still coming forward. Something obviously changed after the Ruiz loss, but he's still a good fighter, and there's still plenty of interesting fights for him, and I'd like to fight him as well.
I'm not against the Joshua versus Joyce fight, but I'm not an idiot either.
And we've broached this subject here before on the channel because this isn't the first time that Joe Joyce has claimed Anthony is swerving him, that he didn't call him out in the past, when the real question is, why would he?
By the time you turned pro, he was already a unified champion, and you're older, several years older than he is. He was a lot further along in his career then than you are now.
So why the fuck would he have been looking at you? The talk of the town at that time were unification matches with the other champions at the weight. Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker, Undisputed, that conversation. Did you already forget?
And never mind that you've been fighting on the rival platform since you turned pro. You've been over there at BT Sport. At that time, he was over there on Sky.
I mean, for the majority of Joe Joyce's career, he's been boxing under the Queensbury Promotions banner, whereas Anthony so obviously has been with Matchroom.
And one of two things might have changed. You know, Sky Sports isn't in the picture anymore. DAZN is, but he's still a Matchroom fighter. He boxes exclusively under the Matchroom banner, kind of like how you box exclusively under Queensbury.
It's strange that Joe Joyce seems more fixated on Anthony Joshua, who has no belts and coming off of 2 consecutive losses, instead of the winner of Fury versus Usyk. You're on the same side of the street as those guys, but this is who you're talking about, and we all know why.
Because that guy's still worth a lot of money.
I say it all the time. If he wasn't, do you think Joe Joyce would still be talking about him? You don't see him talking about a Martin Bakole fight, do you?
You don't see him talking about a Jalalov or a Arslanbek Makhmudov. You see him talking about an Anthony Joshua who's coming off of 2 back-to-back losses.
You said it before, and I'll say it again. Joe Joyce isn't talking about those guys for the same reason that Anthony years ago wasn't talking about him.
It's because he was further along in his career then than Joe Joyce is now. And Joe Joyce is further along in his career than those guys.
Duplicitous candor from the unbeaten up-and-comer is somewhat disingenuous, to say the least. Anthony Joshua needs to rebound. Do you want to let him do that without mentioning his name 100 fucking times?
Why are Frank Warren's fighters so obsessed with that guy?
Anthony Joshua having more marquee value than Joe Joyce, something Joe Joyce himself admitted, that he doesn't have millions of followers like Anthony. Quite right, he doesn't. If afforded that opportunity, would Frank send him over to DAZN? You know the answer.
Of course not.
This is what passes for promotion at Queensbury, mentioning Anthony Joshua 1,000,000 times.
I like Joe Joyce, by the way. He's a fun guy to watch, but I'm no dummy.
Aren't you on the eve of a title shot? Your focus really should be the winner of Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury, and a keep busy fight in the mean in-between time.
So don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining.
And finally, retired 8-division champion Manny Pacquiao has signed with Rizin, set for an exhibition bout this year.
The proliferation of exhibition matches that his contemporary rival Floyd Mayweather was staging gave rise to suspicions that Floyd may have been and still may be experiencing money woes. The same can be said for Manny Pacquiao.
He's always been known for his boxing and brutality, but not his business savvy. Manny Pacquiao will return to the ring again this year, as he announced a one-bout deal with Japanese MMA company Rizin at their New Year's Eve event. Pacquiao will be doing an exhibition, which he said will likely come in the summer. The 44-year-old Filipino legend recently had an exhibition with DKU. He expects to face an MMA fighter. Rizin has done a pair of exhibition bouts featuring Floyd Mayweather, and Pacquiao was present for the last one in September, where Mayweather knocked out Mikuru Asakura. So this isn't an unexpected bit of news or anything. Pacquiao does say he will not be facing Mayweather, though he is still interested in doing that at some point. And Rizin is somewhere that it could conceivably happen with...
Boy, nothing says this ain't your father's era of boxing like Floyd and Manny, both respectively, taking their business elsewhere.
That's what they're doing. If there were, in fact, still a market in America for Manny Pacquiao, for Floyd Mayweather, and for boxing as a whole, the inference you could make is that they'd be staging these exhibition matches here in America, not in the Far East, not in the land of the rising sun.
The majority of Floyd's exhibition matches since he retired have been abroad. You know, the one with his old buddy, Don Moore, in Dubai, the 2 exhibition matches he had in Japan,
and the one that he just had had with social media influencer Deji. The majority of these exhibition bouts have been taking place abroad, not on U.S. soil. The same applies to Manny Pacquiao's last exhibition match with DKU. That was in Seoul, South Korea.
By way of Triller. He's gone from fighting on the Triller platform to being promoted by Rizin. He's getting whatever he can get wherever he can get it.
That's what it looks like, and it's hard to imagine that the proliferation of these exhibition matches by way of these retired boxers is coming from a need for recreational activity and recreational interests alone. You get the sense that both guys might be experiencing money woes because they're not professional boxers anymore. They're not earning what they were earning when they were active.
There are some nostalgic individuals here in the United States that still hold to the notion that America is still the end-all and be-all when it comes to big-time boxing. But if that were true,
Floyd and Manny would be staging these exhibition matches here in America. Sadly, the appetite for Floyd Mayweather and the appetite for Manny Pacquiao isn't now what it used to be years ago, and that was evident in Manny Pacquiao's last professional boxing match opposite the ring, then WBA champion Yordenis Ugas. That was a real boxing match, not an exhibition, and barely anybody bought that thing.
so how many people do you think in America want to see Manny waltz around the ring just for fun, just for kicks? Even a Maypac exhibition match.
And bear in mind that I'm not sure that Floyd is at all receptive to doing the dance with Manny for a second time, even in an exhibition. But if they did,
They could get somebody to bankroll it, and they could likely make a pretty penny with an exhibition match. But here in the United States, need I remind you that that mega match, that mega fight, the highest grossing box office boxing match in the history of boxing matches, it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. It wasn't a barn burner.
and that took place close to 10 years ago, close to 10 years later. What would a fight between them look like when they're both in their mid-40s?
Their faded glory.
And he wants to do the exhibition thing. He's following in Floyd's footsteps if he's doing anything. Floyd inked a deal with Rizin years ago to do exhibition matches in Japan, and now look, man, he's doing the same thing.
Floyd's been waltzing around the ring with colorful characters, social media influencers, and MMA fighters, and now look, man, he's doing the same thing.
He's following in Floyd's footsteps, and I don't know how many Americans are actually interested, actually have an appetite for that kind of stuff.
Not that many if they both had to go to Japan.